Greetings runners, my name is Bife here. So, this is a quick off-the-cuff recording and it's more of a reaction to the reveal that we've seen. Remember that on my channel, if you are new here, because Marathon is something that you're interested in, I focus on the narrative and lore of games. So if you're looking for the impressions of what this is vaguely, as far as it pertains to other extraction shooters, terribly sorry, but I'm not the channel for you. I'd recommend some other content creators for that. However, when it comes to the narrative, buckle up, we're going to go ahead and talk about things. However, I want to go ahead and shout one other thing out. If you're coming to this a little bit later in the day, I have done a full hour and 15-minute recording with the Marathon lore expert Jake the All-Right. That'll be uploaded at some point very soon. I'm currently just waiting on Jake to finish all of his stuff that he's doing on his content today, so I can get his audio and so I can edit that down. All things being considered though, it is going to be something where we discussed a lot of topics in a lot more depth, and I will be uploading that very soon, so look forward to that. I'll post that link down in the description if it's been completed. For the time being though, here's just a spattering of my initial impressions on Marathon and what we saw with regards to the story. And I think before anything else comes along, I think it needs to be said that the art style of the game that we've seen from some of the preview art has definitely carried through to the gameplay. The game, regardless of what happens with regards to graphics and whether or not they get dated in time, has a style of art that is truly unique. It stands out beyond anything else that I've actually seen in the space of shooters, let alone extraction shooters. Everything is advanced and yet also seems strangely blocky. Things can look punk and yet they can also look sleek and futuristic and in place. It is a remarkable thing that Bungie's been able to do with regards to their art, but their art has always cooked. That's nothing new. I can't give you any impressions on what the gameplay is like versus other extraction shooters. Again, that is for someone else to determine. From what I can tell though, if it is going to keep Bungie's signature gunplay, then it is going to be a tight shooter. And everyone else in the gameplay preview who played it seemed to enjoy it. So if someone like, say, Dr. Lupo is someone who you put stock in with regards to his opinions on FPS, and I personally do, then yeah, go ahead and look forward to this one. It's going to be a fun shooting experience. Within the actual gameplay showcase though, it did actually look like we followed a lot of the gameplay of Lupo himself. And of course, his teammates, my boys, Scarrow and Hidden Xperia from over in the Halo lore scene. It's very exciting to see some of the stuff that's going on there, and the moment-by-moment gameplay does look pretty intense. I'm looking forward to that part of it, but also, I need a carry, guys. Terribly sorry. And another major point to be made is that the game is releasing this year, September 23rd, 2025. So if you're looking for it now, go ahead and jump on in. There is also going to be a closed alpha very soon coming later this April. And if you want to get codes, you need to go ahead and fish around within the Marathon community. There are creators giving out codes, but it is worth noting that it is a closed alpha under NDA. You are not allowed to make content that is showing it off specifically. It is also one of those moments where you need to acknowledge that you might not get in. And if you're like me and you're in the UK, you will have longer matchmaking times because this is a test that is focused on the North American region. So if you're in the US or Canada or Mexico, you're probably fine. However, in most other instances, it's probably just going to be a case of let's wait and see if there's a beta. Now, onto more narrative-focused things, let's talk about what the reveal showed off with regards to the narrative very briefly. First of all, on the front of things with regards to lore and storytelling, I wanted to highlight something that Scarrow said very briefly in the player opinions section of the reveal, which was simply that there will be a ton of secrets within the game. If this is the case, as I'll explore a little bit later, well, I think that's actually going to be really good. The kind of gameplay style that Marathon seems to be having with an extraction shooter base means that you need to be able to take in the story whilst also having a moment to just sort of flow with things a little bit differently. You can't have a fully structured story mission in quite the same way that you would in Destiny, or at least I don't think you can. And when it really comes down to it, I think that you are going to need to have an entirely different approach to how storytelling comes along, which means in-map secrets and things that you would discover along the way that are emergent within the environment are going to play a major role in this, and I kind of like that approach. I also heard from some creators who have been able to talk about their closed alpha and pre-alpha experiences that there is a lore terminal of some sort, where contracts and lore blurbs can be viewed, and that's really cool. I believe that's within the information that is available to be shared now, because, I mean, I'm pretty sure it was Jake on our joint discussion who actually brought it up. That being said, if that is true, that's awesome, because it means you'll be able to collect those journal notes bring them up into wherever it is that you beam down from, and then when you're all said and done, you can see more about the world and the weird way in which Marathon's universe has changed. And there was also another note about how storytelling is going to work. Bungie noted that there will be seasonal storytelling within Marathon, and I know that rings alarm bells for quite a few of you, but hear me out. There is no way that this is going to work exactly the same as it does in Destiny. They cannot build a seasonal storyline that is all based around just certain story missions, certain interactions with some NPCs. I think that Marathon storytelling genuinely has to be different. And so, I would look at the possibilities of Marathon storytelling being a little bit closer to something like COD Zombies, in the sense that you are more hunting Easter eggs and secrets throughout the map, and then connecting the story as it pertains to those. If that is the case, then you're potentially looking at some really interesting ideas that might link back and forth. That also might link in with the other signature part of what Marathon is offering that is a little different from other extraction shooters, which is the contracts system. There are a bunch of corporations within the Marathon universe, such as, say, Traxxas and Sakaguchi, and all of them are basically trying to get runners, which is the player characters, to work with them so they can recover resources and materials from the surface of Tau Ceti. So ultimately, at that moment in time, you might be working with, say, a Traxxas contract in order to recover certain artifacts, and that might lead you into the story. Contracts are something that are going to be available, maybe not universally for players, but certainly on the regular. And as a result, I think this may be another point at which you can insert more storytelling. And then, of course, there is the broader point of environmental storytelling. There are 3 maps at launch with a 4th coming soon after, and assuming all of that does pan out, it means that you're going to be able to find certain points of interest within the map that lead you to certain questions. Imagine, for example, a moment where you just find a lone compiler. Those are the dudes with a green orb in their chest and a big, long, flowing red cloak. If you find one of them in the environment that's just chilling, sitting around, or maybe even just find the cloak, or maybe a corpse of one of them, well, then you're inevitably going to be able to piece some bits and pieces together about the story of Marathon and its wider world. On the note of maps, by the way, there has been no confirmation on what the 3 maps will ultimately end up being in Marathon, but I have to imagine that one of them has to inevitably be on the Marathon itself. For those that don't know, it is the ship that is the namesake of this franchise, and it's the thing that is circling up in orbit. You might see a very long, slender part of a ship that's got this nice bulbous section at the very end. Yeah, that's the Marathon. The bulbous section, by the way, is the remains of the Martian moon of Deimos. This is a massive colony ship for which the entire franchise is named, and in the first game it was attacked by aliens. It's the inciting incident of all of this. So I would imagine that if we are going to go up to the Marathon, there's going to be a lot more environmental storytelling there. So that's pretty exciting all on its own, but we don't actually have confirmation of it yet. It's just it would be weird to have a Marathon game and, well, not explore the Marathon. So yeah, I imagine that's going to be one of the 3 maps that comes along at launch. However, this isn't all, because at the very end of the Marathon livestream reveal, there was a mini Marathon movie that was shown off to us, and this is chock full of stuff. First of all, I should say that a further in-depth analysis of this is going to be something that I need to go ahead and do over time. Right now, I just wanted to go ahead and give you my initial thoughts, but this is really cool for a whole bunch of different reasons. Whilst I'll do my in-depth breakdown on some things later, there are some bits and pieces that had to be shouted out now, and the first of which is that at the very beginning of this, it shows off a very important moment in Marathon's history and lore, which is the actual invasion of Tau Ceti 4, the planet on which the new Marathon game takes place, by the race of aliens that attacked Marathon in the first ever Marathon game back in 1994. The 4. No, I know there's been a lot of 4s in that sentence, but the 4 is the alien empire that attacks. It's kind of like the Covenant from Halo. They're made up of one dominant race and then a bunch of subservient slave races. And you spell them not like the number 4, but with a P at the very beginning, and then an H in there for good measure, and no U. Yeah, whatever, I'll put the spelling on screen for you. The whole point is, that's a really important moment within the actual story of Marathon, and we get to see what it was like from the ground of Tau Ceti. We get to see the Marathon as it's being attacked. We get to see the moment where everyone saw that their entire lives were going to get upended. We also see a few other bits and pieces in this trailer. In particular, at the very beginning, we see a compiler. This is one of the red cloak, green orb fellas that I was talking about earlier, except it's floating along in this kind of ethereal state. This is a very interesting enemy simply because of the fact that it might not be an enemy. By this point in Marathon's storyline, the compilers might be free from the grasp of the Four, who were their alien overlords that basically turned them on humanity as weapons, and electronic warfare was their specialty. The compilers' presence here is also really telling because they were major allies to a massive player within the Marathon universe, and that player's name is Durandal, one of the 3 AIs that was on board the Marathon ship itself that went rampant near the start of the game, an AI who ultimately charts his entire story through the course of the other 2 Marathon games that followed the original. One of them even has his name on the box. He's a very important character, and, well, he has a very inbuilt alliance with the Svit, which is the actual species name of the compilers. So, if we see them here, it's entirely possible that Durandal will be following in their footsteps, or the wavy, cloaky part where their footsteps might be. You get what I mean. Anyway, there are other bits and pieces that are really weird about this trailer. We can see the typical lives of runners, and we can understand how they seem to have continuous memory problems as time goes on. We can see their creation as new biomata are formulated by the Sekaguchi Genetics silkworms, this technology that just sort of spins runners and biomata from nothing. And of course, there are so many other strange occurrences that we see throughout the trailer. Goods and things that are being scavenged, moments at which the UESC shows up to fight the runners, and even this strange guy who walks into a field and explodes, blooms into colors, transcends. I don't know what you call this, but I certainly think it looks painful. Anyway, there are some other notes to be made before we round all this off, and the one that I really want to go ahead and touch on is this. In both the initial part of the reveal that showed us gameplay first and the trailer, and of course in this movie at the very end, there is a voice that's talking. I think it might be the same voice, and because it continuously seems to be quoting the Ozymandias poem that we've heard throughout the ARG previously, I wonder if this is the voice of Durandal, the AI that I mentioned earlier. I know I've brought him up a bunch, but, well, he is one of the most important characters in the setting. And if he is bringing himself into the forefront in the story here, that's incredibly important. There is another possibility, of course, and that's that the voice that is speaking here is one of the 8 AI that was on the Tau Ceti colony. There are a bunch of them, but we don't know if we'll interact with any of them. All of these are fair questions that need to be asked and answered in good time. So that's mostly what I wanted to go ahead and discuss, although I should state one last thing, which is simply that my impressions of Marathon thus far is that the reveal had me intrigued. I would sit there and say that there are certainly going to be moments at which people need more persuading of whether it is or isn't for them, and the ultimate decider of these things is going to be a public beta test, if such a thing ever happens. If you get to play the closed alpha, I imagine that things are still going to be subject to change from that moment, but regardless, I think that there is still some proving that needs to be done with this. So if you're curious, I'd recommend trying it out. If you were sold on the art style alone, that's great, but ultimately, it's going to be coming down to more than that. Extraction shooters are not necessarily a genre that everyone can enjoy, so it's going to be a case of whether or not it's for you. Definitely give it a try if you're interested, but for my money, I would say that I am excited, but not necessarily hyped. People love to go ahead and post the hype train GIFs that go along with everything, and I'm just not there yet. You know, I need to understand what it feels like to be a runner, to enjoy the experience. I need to get the adrenaline rush when the game is really going, and I need to see what the story and lore is actually like before I can make a judgment like that. However, regardless, you guys know I'm going to make content for this, and you can expect some of it as the weeks go by. If I can give any content on the closed alpha, I will, but as best I know I am not allowed to record anything, and if I can give my impressions on it, that's great, but there's an NDA that you have to sign in order to get into it as best I know, so yeah, I'll do what I can, but the likelihood is that that content is going to be scant and very slim. All that being said though, I'm very excited to see what Bungie's cooking up right here. There's some interesting concepts they're playing with in the world, and, well, again, I'm excited, but not necessarily hyped just yet. We're going to go ahead and see what's what with this. Either way, these are my first impressions, and I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, go ahead and hit subscribe and the bell next to subscribe to turn on those email notifications. And also, do me a favor, Let me know your own thoughts down below in the comments section, and go ahead and like the video. But know that, as per usual, your viewership, as always, has been quite enough for me, and that in the meantime, my name is Bife. Rodacia Arastra. I'll see you Starside.